consistency coach. And below us, we have our brothers, Mr. Young Timothy himself, Mr. Tawami Gaddy, also known as Son of Timothy, or better yet, the Available Man. And by his side, we have our younger brother, Mr. Christopher McClellan, from across the table with Christopher McClellan, also known as the angry guy that is still learning. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing on this day?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Families in good health. No bad news. And my Alahayim is still good. Yes, I'm
Yes, sir.
good.
Yes, sir.
I'm
I
doing
need a
well.
hat. I think I need a hat or something.
What you mean,
I'm
man?
doing,
Everybody need a hat.
yeah. I,
Is this what we are doing on this fine Friday evening?
I mean, I don't
Hey,
even
man.
know what to say.
Hey, man, y'all got to learn how to have fun, man. That's all I'm saying.
I love it
Wayne
here.
came with a hat,
I'm looking at the comments.
Hey, man, I'm just
In the
saying.
world.
Listen, if y'all don't know, we like to have fun over here.
Boys
Y'all
in the
know.
hood. I told you.
You said boys in the hood? Who said that?
It's Michelle Ray. See?
It's gonna be my this gonna be my costume next year for Halloween. This year for Halloween. Listen, listen. Again, we greatly appreciate you guys for joining us. And as always, I look forward to unite with my brothers and talking to my brothers every week. But just as much as I look forward to talking to them, I also look forward to talking to everybody on all these different platforms that we blast out. So I'm gonna start over here on Instagram first because Miss Queenie Love is over there. So Queenie, good to see you and welcome to the show. Always good to see you. And coming over here on YouTube, Michelle Ray, good to see you. Cassandra McKenzie, good to see you. Nick D, good to see you. Let's see, who am I missing here? Miss Adrian Walter, good to see you. May Bird, good to see you. Cassandra, good to see you. Crystal, good to see you. And listen, if for whatever reason I missed you, I do apologize. But listen, get into the chat on whatever platform you're on and just speak. And we like to acknowledge you by name because, again, we appreciate you guys. We value you guys. We know you could be any place else on this fine Friday evening, but you are here with us, and we do not take that lightly. Hey, man, y'all ready to get this thing started?
Let's go.
Y'all gonna stop calling me boys in the hood, though. But you know what? Now that you're thinking about it, I do feel like I'm hanging out the side of a Hyundai, though. I'm just saying.
Well, they told me I need a hat, so I'll be right back.
Yeah, go and get your hat, bro.
Yeah, do-rag, bro.
Today is Hat Friday. We're doing hats on Friday. Hat Friday.
Hey, every time I look at your screen, coach, I just want to turn around and shout out, Ricky. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do it.
Hey, man, you already did it. Tell me you ain't gonna do it. All right, listen, we're about to get this party started. Have you ever wondered how the transformative leadership experiences of Black pioneers have shaped the way we perceive and practice leadership today? Come on, man, stop laughing. Y'all making me laugh. Cut it out. Join us as we embark on an entrenching journey that unravels the empowering narratives and invaluable lessons from these trailblazers. Lessons that continue to resonate and inspire leaders of all backgrounds. Welcome to Leadership Lessons, Unearthing the Wisdom of Black Pioneers, a captivating conversation where we unpack the profound and timeless wisdom of Black pioneers in leadership. In this discussion, we will unearth the remarkable experiences, challenges, and triumphs of trailblazing individuals who've paved the way for future generations. Through their stories of resilience, innovation, and mentorship, we will draw inspiration and glean valuable lessons that are not only relevant for today's leaders, but essential for shaping the inclusive, diverse, and empowering leadership landscape of tomorrow. So join us as we explore the impact of their trailblazing leadership and the enduring lessons to continue to resonate across industries and communities. That being said, gentlemen, we're going to kind of jump into this quick conversation real quick. Thanks, Queenie. I appreciate that. Queenie said I look like a thug over here. This is my thuggish look. I'm just saying. Look at Chris. Chris look like somebody's uncle over there. All right, check it out. So the first thing,
Hey,
And I did it like this on purpose.
Chris is missing his black and mild right now. That's what.
You know what I'm saying? And my shot of Henny. Some type
oh
of
my God. You guys are terrible. Hey, listen, before we get started, I thank you for doing that. I want to make sure that we understand here on the Empowering Perspective community, we believe wholeheartedly that everybody is entitled to their own perspective. That being said, we're all subject matter experts to our own perspective. So, as we get ready to dive in this conversation, gentlemen, I want to throw this first question out at you because remember, we're talking leadership this week. Okay, I want to set the conditions there. And my mentor, John Maxwell, says that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So, that being said, I want to dive into this one. So, how do you see the experiences of Black pioneers serving as a guiding light for leaders today as they navigate through the complexities of our modern world?
I think the experiences that they have gone through, it allows us to see that even with adverse adverse situations and trying times, anything can be done if you put your mind to it and you're dedicated to the purpose. That's why we can't allow, as not just people of color, but as people, when you find something that pushes against you, we can't just fold. We can't just say, "Oh, that's just the way it is. Just that's how it's always been." We've seen people go through adversities and get past it. So we got to have that same vigor, that same fight within us to say, "Man, I got to be able to change my world. I may not change the world, but as long as I can change my world and my surroundings, I'm making a change." And that's how we all got to look at things.
TikTok, right? So it's a lot of interesting stuff on TikTok. And with that being said, I have seen an influx, at least on my timeline, of older people's talking points. Like it'll be people like in black and white, even Kobe Bryant, and some of this information is being they're taking like their clips from like interviews and different things like that, and and you're seeing them on TikTok, and different other social media platforms and different things like that. And I think honestly, I have a son who's 18 years old, and he's even shared with me some of those different clips, or he may recognize somebody who I may follow, for mentorship or for motivation or something like that. So I think that how some of those black pioneers serving as a guiding light is just that people today are bringing back some of their information and some of their leadership and some of their token points that can help people today. So I'm just going to leave it with social media and just how their information from the past is being used today, and is being available to our younger people and even us through social media platforms.
I think for me, when I'm looking at this question, I begin to question myself of what the mindset has to be, because as we get to speculate on what the experience is like, I start asking sometimes, did they do what they did to get ahead in the system early on, or did they do what they did to create opportunities for us later? We always say that. Was it a struggle? Because we all know, when I can't speak for everybody's experience, but I know me and Roland have talked about our experiences growing up, and we know the urgency of getting it done, of making money, when you're poor, when you watching mama struggle, when you in the hood, and money just ain't moving around you. And so it's an urgency to either move to find a way to make the dollar, or get out of the position and get in a new position and never have to struggle again. And so there's a part of me that sticks right there and saying they suffered to make a better opportunity for us today by breaking down the concepts that we were intellectually inferior, and so they championed and conquered in education and in professional fields so that we didn't have to fight through those stereotypes. But then a part of me too was like, well, they were in a position early on to change their future and their family's future so it don't look like their past. So as I focus or I think on their experiences, those are the two mindsets that really stick with me. And I wonder, if we could speak to them today, which one would be true?
I have a question. When you talk black leaders, are you talking like actual leaders who are in the position to change something? Or are you talking about the entertainers and those types of people who are in a guiding light to do something as well? Like, which way are you going about it? Because if I'm looking at it as this, I'm going to take it as the people that were actually in a position to actually make some changes, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm not against that. I say let's have fun with it, man. Whichever way you want to go with it, I'm open to it.
I wouldn't say that they were serving as a guiding light. I will say that the Black pioneers opened up doors so that way we can do this. So that's where I would start. As far as like a guiding light goes, I would say to a certain extent, but a lot of us don't really, and I'm including myself when I say this, a lot of us don't really know the history behind those Black pioneers to begin with. We just know what we were, you know what I'm saying? We just know what we were taught and what we see. So in order for us to even use that as a guiding light, we would have to become lightweight historians. You understand what I'm saying? So I would say yes on the surface, but I really wish that more people, myself included, would dig a little deeper and then go from there.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Is it important the is important that does the intent need to be there for them to be able to provide a guiding light, right? Can
No.
someone's
Nuh-uh.
Okay.
A lot of people don't intend to do the things that they do, but they wind up doing great things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can have the intention to be great, but how you do it, most people don't even know how to predict that.
I like what you're saying here. I like everybody's perspective, obviously, um, because I think it's important that we can hear it from different sides of the coin. Hear what people think as it portrays to this. I actually I took the time today, and I was doing some work, and I had The Color Purple playing in the background. Um, and if you care to watch it, it's on HBO Max. Um, but I was just wanted to see what it was about. Um, and in my mind, the old Color Purple in my mind served as a catalyst to the new one. I actually like the old one. Didn't too particularly care for the new one. That's just my opinion, though. Y'all can come for me later. But
Nobody cared for it, so you're not alone.
okay. Um, but I think using that as an example, seeing what the old one was, I kind of had somewhat of an expectation. But like to Chris's point, I've also seen what other people said, but I like to formulate my own opinion. And I think when it comes down to certain aspects of leadership and some of our forefathers and some of our grands and great grands and so forth and so on, we kind of look at the things that they've done, and we may not necessarily do it the exact same way that they did it, but I think we can look at their life and see how the things that they may have done kind of catapulted us to a new era. And I give you a perfect example of that. If you have patterned your life to such a degree that you, in your mind, believe you want to leave something for your children's children, then your life's work has been set to such a degree that you are setting things up for them. That way, when they become of age, they don't necessarily have to do the grind of working 9 to 5 or whatever the case may be, unless that is a prerequisite that you have for them to inherit what they're going to get. Um, and so, to Chris's point, I think a lot of times when you look at some of the things that our forefathers may have done, they didn't have people like Tony Robbins. They didn't have John Maxwell. They didn't have, Simon Sinek. They didn't have Jordan Peterson and so forth and so on. So they couldn't go and listen to these people give specific leadership principles. But I also believe that if we had took the time, if we take the time, like Chris said, if we take the time and go and study their lifestyle, we can pull out certain things that they may have done, and it could have been unbeknownst to them, right? Look at some of the things that they may have done and say, hey, that's the principle of this. Hey, that's the principle of sacrifice. Hey, that's the principle of, seed time, harvest, so forth and so on. And I think that's the key. I think a lot of times where the confusion is that sometimes the older generation want the younger generation to do it the way the older generation did it, or the younger generation believe that the older generation wants them to do it the way they did it. Someplace in there is a disconnect. And so what we have to do is realize that, my son and my daughters may not necessarily do exactly what I did. If I'm being honest, I don't necessarily want them to join the army. I think the army was a great place and it gave me a good start at life, but I'm hoping that I gave them enough to where they don't necessarily have to do that. And so far, so good. Now, that being said, moving forward, I'm also concerned at what are some of the principles that they have gotten from me as well. So that's why I wanted to start here, because that's what today's show is all about. It is all about leadership principles. So I kind of want to use that as a springboard to go into each, just like we did last week, right? So I want each person to kind of give us a snippet of the person that they decided to bring to this conversation. And then what we're going to do is use a collective platform to pull out some of their principles. So that being said, gentlemen, whoever wants to go first, have at it. The floor is yours.
I'll go first. Since Roland jumped on a grenade last time. Let me change my hat though. Do something different. You know what I'm saying? Put something new on y'all. um, so I did mine on I had some new people, but I went back and did Jesse Owens. He was a track star, track athlete back in the long time ago, back in the 30s and stuff like that. So and I guess like overall at the end of the day, what I got out of him was just the resilience. During that time there was a lot of racism, a lot of pressure going on, and he still competed and stuff like that. And I think that when we look at resilience, I mean, I look at resilience as something, as a quality that leaders have. So that's how I'm implementing the word resilience in the leadership. Um, and I just think that, when you're a leader, you have to have a certain amount of resilience, and to go through a lot of things that he went through. We sit over here and we complain about this or we complain about that. But, I could only imagine living through that time and what it must have been like, and the pressures, and the death threats, and sometimes being one of one in certain places and circles that you go in. And I think what it took for him to still lace him up every day and go out there and train to become the that athlete that he became. I think it took a lot of resilience. So I'm starting off with Jesse Owens.
I brought someone new to the table as well. A man named John Henry Howell, or however you want me to pronounce it, Roland. But he was a surgeon, a professor of medicine, and and a philanthropist as well in Nashville. You know, him and his family served food to the poor, to the homeless. He conducted over, I think there's over 30,000 surgeries during his career, and he also taught medicine. And he was the president of the National Medical Association in 1935. You know, just through his educational journey, he had to go fight through a lot of barriers in that time, a lot of stereotypes, probably a lot of forces probably pushing against him, just off of the information and the way the narrative that we've seen from that time of people who pursued their education as people of color. Um, and then to come out of that, become one of the world's most prominent surgeons and still uh, doing the work in his community for his people. I see not only resiliency there, but you also see that what he did, a part of it, along with probably doing what he loved in medicine, but a part of it also seems as if he has done something to break down barriers for his people because his heart and he put his family's time, efforts, and money back into that community. So that's why I chose him.
I chose Dr. Vivian Theodore Thomas, and we may not know his name or remember his name, but a lot of us have seen the movie about the blue baby syndrome known as cyanotic heart disease. This was in the 1940s when they would have babies that were blue or bluish in tone and tint because they weren't receiving the proper perfusion or enough oxygen throughout their body because their heart wasn't pumping properly. And he came up in a time where you're talking in the 1940s where people didn't even want people of color to touch them if they weren't white. So they didn't care if you were a doctor or whatever. They didn't trust you. So he had to go where he had to do things behind the scenes. Even in the movie that was made about his life in this situation, where Yasin Bey or Most Def, we may know him as Most Def, the rapper Most Def, Yasin Bey, he portrayed this man, and it showed how he was even up for awards and couldn't enter the hotel, couldn't enter the building, couldn't stay in where the rest of the doctors were because of his skin tone, because of his complexion. And being able to traverse situations like that and still hold your head high and still make sure that you do what needs to be done, no matter what color the baby is, no matter what color the person is, you are there to make it happen. That says a lot for a person. That says that he has character beyond prejudice, beyond racism, and beyond any of those things. So that's something to admire and say, man, I don't care what somebody calls me. It's about what I answer to. That's what my grandmother say. It's not about what they call you. It's about what you answer to. And he was in that situation where he was called a bunch of things and demeaned a lot, but he still made sure that his job of taking care of those children, those babies, was at the utmost importance to him. And so no matter what, he made sure it happened. Dr. Vivian Theodore Thomas. It's a male. You got to say that with Vivian, you know.
Okay, this is the part where I hold myself accountable. Today was just a crazy week and I didn't bring anybody here. However, I just learned a lot off of here, which is what I said in the beginning. Like, if we actually took the time to actually dig up our history, we would know about these people. I mean, everybody knows about Jesse Owens and the racism that he had to endure. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know about Vivian. I didn't know about who Tawame was talking about. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I mean. Like, in order for us to actually be able to use the information, we got to go find it. I didn't know who any of these people were until tonight. So I just learned something. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And to your point, if you looked at it from the past couple of weeks, we were kind of building up to this. So I'm glad you said that, and thank you for that transparency because that's really what we're trying to get out. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump into mine, And for those of you who ever seen the movie Rustin on Netflix, um, that kind of would be a great place to start, or you can just look them up, whatever the case may be. But my person for this evening is Bayard Rustin, Bayard. If you just want to look him up, Rustin. He was a prominent African American civil rights activist, strategist, and organizer who played a significant role in the struggle for racial equality and social justice in the United States. Despite facing discrimination and marginalization, both due to his race and his sexual orientation, Rustin's contribution to the civil rights movement were immense. He was born in March 17, 1912, in Westchester, Pennsylvania. From a young age, he was involved in social justice causes, including the fight against racial segregation and discrimination. He was influenced by his grandmother, who was an active member of the NAACP. He was deeply committed to the principles of pacifism, which is the belief that any violence, including war, is unjustified. And he was also focused on the, just kind of like what I just said, a nonviolent resistance, which he learned from his Quaker upbringing. He was a fervent believer in the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi and traveled to India to study Gandhian nonviolence firsthand. Rustin's organizing skills and commitment to nonviolent protests made him a valuable asset to the civil rights movement. He worked closely with leaders such as A. Philip Randolph and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., helping to organize major campaigns and events, including the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963. So, again, like I said, because he was marginalized based upon his sexual orientation, his work for racial justice kind of worked. It worked, but you kind of got to imagine during that era how a lot of the resiliency that he had to portray when it came down to a lot of the work that he did. So Rustin was also an outspoken advocate for LGBTQ plus rights. He was openly gay at the time when homosexuality was widely stigmatized and criminalized. Rustin faced discrimination and persecution because of his sexual orientation, but he remained committed to the fight for equality for all marginalized communities. So, just in general, his life and his work exemplified the power of nonviolent resistance, grassroots organizing, and intersectional activism. So again, if you go watch the movie, I think what you will learn, you'll see a lot of that on display because he was the guy that will go out into the neighborhoods and go out into the people and organize down at the community level by doing face-to-face engagements. So again, back to a lot of the same things you heard here so far, you had a lot of resiliency displayed, being able to deal with all different types of marginalization, not just from your skin color. In some cases, when we're talking females, we're talking from your gender. In his case, from his sexual orientation. And then it was also a moment in time where he was not selected to work with Dr. King because of some information that he learned based upon some indiscretions. I say it that way. So again, Bayard Rustin is another person. And again, one of the things I want to point out here as we're pressing forward, it seems like a systemic concept is resiliency. And so if we can take anything from just this version of the conversation, I think it's safe to say that leaders, regardless of where you are, regardless of what era you lived in, every leader must be resilient, highly resilient, to deal with whatever it is that comes along with it. And I can just tell you from my perspective, some days aren't going to look like you dreamed about when you were thinking about what you wanted to do. So you're going to have to be resilient enough to overcome the negative thoughts that you're having in your head based upon what reality is telling you and what your goals are demanding of you. So all great points. Any other final points before we start pulling some of this information out the chats? Because I'm seeing some people put some stuff in here. No, everybody good to go? All right, all right. Let's see. Looks like Michelle Ray. Let me see where. There we go. I believe the pioneers broke down the barriers that we do not or didn't see. Most put in a book, i.e., Colin Powell or President Barack Obama. Absolutely. And those are the leaders that were highly publicized. And so, absolutely, having met the Colin Powells, I never met President Obama, but again, these leaders, they were they went through a lot to get to where they are. So it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people don't know that they had to deal with just to get to where they are. And so, ideally, hopefully, for the generations that follow behind them, they don't have to deal with those things. So, great point. The light shine through those that were followers of the Most High, like Harriet Tubman, Nelson Mandela, and Mansa Musa. You know what? I was actually going to do Nelson Mandela. It was right there, and I changed my mind at the last minute. But absolutely, absolutely, and he did a lot that was documented and a lot that wasn't documented as well. So great points. Thank you for that. Let's see. Mansa Musa inherited a kingdom that was already wealthy, but his work in expanding trade made Mali the wealthiest kingdom in Africa. Riches came from mining significant salt and gold deposit in Mali. Great information. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Looks like Lisa Keys is bringing up Duke Ellington, born in 1899. The legendary jazz composer used music as a subtle but compelling way to tell stories of racial injustice to wide-reaching audiences. Yeah, that is awesome. And for those people who have the gift of music, there's some amazing stories that can be told. And you can get your points across in the gift of song. And a lot of times people don't catch it. A lot of times people don't catch it. But that works on the other side as well. I want to make sure I say that works on the other side. You can inject some bad information in people's mindset through song as well. So thank you for that. Shout out to everybody who has joined us that I haven't gotten a chance to speak to yet. CS Global Campus, welcome. The Virgo Cigar Guy, good to see you, my brother. That's my cousin out there in Texas. Good to see you, bro. And welcome to the show. Lisa Keys, good to see you again. I don't think I got a chance to speak to you. All right, so let's kind of start peeling back the onion on these questions here. So, overcoming adversity, because it seems as though everybody had that in common. So, in your opinion, gentlemen, and I want you to just imagine with us, in your opinion, what strategies and coping mechanisms did these Black leaders employ to maintain their determination and focus in the midst of multifaceted challenges?
Well, I think a lot of them they chose character and class over having a get back attitude. Because when you're talking about, like you said, Baynard Rustin, or even in that same time frame, James Baldwin, Alvin Ailey, and people of that sort, besides Baynard Rustin, the other two were openly gay. So at a time where one, they Black and they gay, so now you getting hit on both sides, and they had to say, okay, my character speaks for me, not my sexual orientation. So they had to stand in the midst of those adversities and say, man, my strategy will have to be how I speak to you. And that's how I will make you speak to me, because my character is to such a point, to such a degree, to where I can talk with the president or talk with the man on the street holding the wine bottle, and it's going to be the same conversation. And that's why when you see old recordings of uh, like Baldwin speaking on television and things of that sort, you see that the people that was speaking to him didn't address his sexual orientation. They addressed whatever he was speaking on. And that was one of those things where you can admire somebody from afar simply by how they carry themselves.
I'm gonna speak from the aspect of John Howe, because looking at his timeline, right? He was born in 1878, right? He died 1944. But I'm looking at the time of his career, right? He reached the height of his prominence, not of his work, in 1935. And the reason why that's important, because on top of being being in the young generation directly after the emancipation, going through the black codes in the South, then Jim Crow in the South, then you get from 1910 to the 1930s, you see bl- over 100 black communities burnt down or flooded out, uh, black hospitals being tore down and burnt down, defunded. All these things are taking place in that time of history, and the resiliency, the mindset, right, that you have to have. And I'm going to the mind, because to live through all of that, to see all of this happen, to know that this is not just a system, because today we said it's a system that was not built for us, but actively working against you, and you still grow, you still, as coach would say, you still stand on your square, and don't allow nothing to knock you off. You have to have a mindset that says that I'm living in spite of, right, my circumstances and my conditions don't move me. I don't think and maybe it's just me, because whenever I go through something, or I have to endure something, my first time in basic training, my first time in the field, my first time going through some type of training or something I haven't done before, my mindset had to say, come what may, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to accomplish the end goal, regardless of what they throw at me. To have somebody yelling in my face and spit flying out their mouth, knowing I just wanted to haul off, but I had to learn to stand there. Like, that's something that I never had to deal with growing up. You yelled in my face. I knew what time it was, but I had to change my mind. And so I think of our pioneers from that era, from those eras, as someone who was able to allow to fixate their mind on the goal, regardless of the circumstances. And sometimes that means I have to change my mind from this to this, in order to stay in the moment that I'm presented with right now. That's what I got on it. I love talking about the mind.
You
You get something?
Yeah. So I mean, because Gaddy is right there where I was going to be at. So I just just kind of jumping, if y'all don't mind. If y'all
Go
don't
ahead.
mind. I am there with the mind as well. I got the resiliency, but resiliency is only a buffer that's going to buy me a certain amount of time. There has to be some sort of meditative practices, or I have to have some people around me that is going to uplift me after I come back from doing whatever it is that I'm doing. So there has to be a constant version of meditation to where I continue to talk myself back into the thing. I am keeping my mind fixed on a promise as opposed to keeping my mind fixed on a circumstance. I am keeping my mind focused on the expected outcome instead of just reminiscing on what someone did to me. Somebody throwing some, I don't know, throwing some tomatoes or whatever the case may be at me when I'm on, trying to talk to these people in the town square. So I have to go back to the mind, because if the mind is not conditioned to such a degree that resiliency can be at its all-time high, in the midst of it, when I come back and I am not around all this, and when emotions and tempers start to settle down, I'm still stuck with this thing here. So I got to start working on my thought process. I got to keep my thought processes sharp. I need people around me who can speak into me to kind of keep me motivated, and help me to understand, say, hey, I understand that it didn't feel good when they said this, going back to those people who opened the gate. It didn't feel good when they said this, or so forth and so on. But you are not what they said you are. You are so much more than that. So that's where I'm at with the mindset. And I'm with you on that one, Gary. Thank you, bro.
Well, I had that on my list too, but I marked it off. So, but I guess in a roundabout way, I was looking at discipline and goals. So I think sometimes when like the mindset piece, when you have your mindset on something, there's nothing that can deter you from that. Um, when you really focus and you really dialed in and you have that discipline to go along with it. So I look, this guy he had four gold medals in 4 gold medals in 1936 Olympics. So, you know, if you look at any great, whether you're looking at basketball, you're looking at football, you're looking at any great athlete, and one of the things that they all have in common is they have discipline. You know what I mean? And they're goal oriented, and you know, they set goals out and they try to go out and achieve them. So I think that, you know, for me, I'm missing a question, but but for me, I want to just, you know, I want to kind of end it with the discipline and the goal setting is what's kind of needed in there.
I don't know what strategies or what coping mechanisms that they use to do what they did. I'm just gonna say they had to be nuts. They really had to be crazy to go out and do it and to keep doing it. You
Well,
understand what I'm saying?
let me ask this: what strategies would you use if you were then during that time?
What strategy would I use? I guess I would use the strategy of diplomacy. I would want to do some talking, and I would let them know, just like Roland said, I can talk just like you, even though I don't look like you, even though I'm not, you know what I'm saying, even though I don't think like you. I can still talk like you. We can still hold a conversation. Now let's come to a medium. That's what I would do. I don't. I understand the pacifism side of it too, because I always say that the best fights are the ones that never ever happen. So I can understand not wanting to go into something thinking that you were going to get into a fight.
But
I
you
think
also
that's
got to
where I was.
realize. But you also got to realize a lot of times, given the environments that they were in, you know, having that diplomacy approach wasn't a way of, it wasn't even available.
Mm. Then honestly, I have no idea because I'm not there.
Right.
I wouldn't know what I would do back then. I truly don't. It's a different time, and according to the histories that I have read, that's around the time where no matter what, we had to fight. Like we had to. Like that's how they looked at us. So we had to do this. So I don't know.
Yeah, because a lot of people will say what they would have done because of the knowledge they have now, and they not in that situation, so they can say, "Well, I would have this and I would have that," but we don't even
Hindsight
know.
is always 2020.
Right. So, and I think that the only way you got to whoop a bully. That's how I look at it. That's me, man. I don't have a passive thing in me like that. Now, if we're talking, we're talking, but I don't have it in me to let you do all that to me and me just say, okay. Because at some point, it's like in the movie The Black Panther, what's his name was the hero, but they killed him to me. My man who was with Steve Harvey daughter, Michael B. Jordan.
Killmonger.
Yeah, he was
Killmonger.
the hero because he said, "Hey, no, I'm getting out this situation, but if it's by death, I got to get out." And sometimes we look at those people as you're gonna put us in harm's way. We're already in harm's way. I'm trying to get us out of it, and if I gotta die doing it, so be it.
Yeah. You know what? Nope. We're not doing that tonight. We're not doing a comic book character thesis tonight. Nope. Mm-mm.
I want to hear it
We'll talk after.
because I see it both ways.
I do too. Because I'm looking at it like I remember the movie The Great Debaters, right? And you remember when the father was driving, they hit the pig, and you know
And he had to pay up.
and he signed over
yeah,
his paycheck for the week or however long that paycheck was for.
just because he didn't want no trouble.
Just because he didn't want no, because his kids was in the car.
Right.
And his family was there. The chance of them, like, so there's that moment, and there's moments like when I'm thinking like Roland, and this is why I go to the mind piece, because there's a point to where I have to come out of myself and go not into survival mode for me, but survival mode for everyone coming behind me. And so in that moment, he had to go. I know he wanted to haul off and swing, but he would have been another Negro swinging, and left on display, and no telling what would have happened to his kids. So I feel where Roland's at, because there's part of me like, you're not finna just
But
do
see, in
this.
that situation, I agree with you, because you have the children and everything. So there takes some restraint in all situations. But I'm not talking about then, because wars are planned. They not just, okay, we just jumping on this thing. We going over here to whoop some tail. No, they're planned. And I think that when it comes to situations like that, just like if I'm in the car, every time I get stopped by the police a lot for some reason, maybe because of my foot. But when I get stopped, my hands are 10 and 2, because I know I got something in the car, and I don't want anybody to feel a certain way. Next thing you know, it's a heightened sense of his awareness. Don't want that. So I'm trying to make him calm, him or her, and keep the situation at bay. But when it comes to strategies, when it comes to making sure that we move forward as a people, I think that's a planned execution of a task that has nothing at all to do with passivity.
And so I'm like, oh, I see it both ways as well. And I think certain things can kind of cloud the situation. Everybody's seen and read about the Emmett Till situation. And if you looked at the movie, there was a particular event when he whistled at a white woman and then went home, and then they actually came to the house. Now, he was actually staying with his uncle during the summer. And so the uncle had a decision to make, because the uncle had, wife and kids in there as well. And so, the other side to it is that I can fight for my nephew, but then there's going to be some secondary and tertiary. So I get both sides of it. And then when you start looking at these civil rights leaders, activists, the people who were like showed a lot of the heavy load, like we talked about last week, September Clark. We talk about people like Victor Hugo Green. Like, there is some significant risks that they had to take for the sake of the greater good. But they also did these things at the risk of their families. So you also have to consider those things. Like, sure, you go to work every day, but you go to work, you don't necessarily wonder, it's not even a thought whether somebody's going to go to your house and deal with the people at your house. But you got to realize that these people were probably doing this in every waking moment of the day, based upon some of the work that they was doing, especially when their names started getting big. And so that's part of the things that we have to realize. So now that kind of goes into the mindset of, the determination and the focus. Like, I can't focus if I'm doing this work, if I'm worried about what's going on back at my house when I'm not there. So what do I need to do? What's the other side to it? Do I bring them with me so I can keep an eye on them, so that the boys can keep an eye on them at the same time? So it's a lot that goes into this question that we have to consider, because there's always some extra stuff that we need to consider. Always. Okay, you had something else? I hope I didn't step across you.
No, just that, when you make a decision to put your life on the line for something, you know what I mean? Like you said, the ripple effect that comes along with that, is your family set up to deal with what happens if you go financially, um, and all those other things, and not just financially, but just, what I mean? Like you said, the second and third order effects of that life decision, you know what I mean? And like I said, I see it both ways. I think there are certain, we all served in the military, 3 or 4 of us did. So, at some point, we made that decision to put our life on the line, you know what I mean, for a cause. When we signed up, that's what we signed up to do, knowing that at some point that could be the outcome. So I I definitely see it. I definitely see it that way. And if I don't see it that way, then I guess in a sense I'll be contradicting myself, because I did 20 years. So
Yeah.
That's why I said that you have to be nuts. You are knowingly going. Listen, man, listen. And I think this is why we really don't have a lot of prominent Black leaders that are really doing what they're supposed to do in our community now. The cost of leadership is your life.
I think
And
we got
nobody
comfortable.
looks at it like that.
but see, here's the thing about joining the military, and I don't want to get too far off subject, but At least if you die when you in, while you in, at least like, all right. So you can compare living in a hood somewhere in wherever city, right? And there are gunshots and there are people dying all the time. Or you can go in a sense, train yourself up, and if you go out of war, you still could possibly die. But if I die on the street, my family get nothing. If I die in the military, at least my family will get 450,000 off the rip.
But
You
see,
know what I'm
you
saying?
I
So,
get what I get that. You are protected by the same government that you fought for. But if we're
mm,
talking about the leaders from back then, what protection did they have? And they still went out and did this. Like, you have to be crazy to do this.
See,
You
I
understand what I'm
think
saying?
it's less of crazy, right? Because when you first said crazy, I was thinking Kobe. I was thinking Mamba mentality, right? Unhealthy
It's
amount of
it's
time in the gym, right?
it's
But
something
but
similar, but it's with your
but it,
life. You understand what I'm
but the,
saying?
but the difference is my life depends on it. Right? You get what I'm saying? Not just my life, but the life of my kids. For the reason why I tell my kids every time, both my sons at one point said, "I'm gonna be a soldier like daddy." Nope, daddy's soldier, so you have other opportunities, right? I did this for the better tomorrow. The reason why we went through the struggles we went through, why we went through some, because it's people that see how soldiers are treated at times, especially as a junior soldier, and they be like, "Man, you nuts! There's no way I could have ever." Yeah, but I did it for a purpose. I knew what my expected end was for my next generation. And so for them, it's life or death for our people. You know, for some of them, right? I can't speak of the mindset of every one of them because we don't know everybody's story. But somebody, it's a moment when your back is against the wall. I don't know anybody else in here was ever been as hungry as I've been, ever been homeless. But it's a moment where it's like I'm not sleeping outside today. I'm going to find me something to eat. I'm going, there's a certain level of insanity. Yes, it's insanity. Why? Because I don't see it as normal people see it. No, you don't tell me,
You
oh,
are
he's a savage.
nuts.
I have to be because I gotta eat. And that's
Tawame,
what and that's
Tawame,
where they at.
I get what you're saying. I understand where you are coming from. But again, you are speaking as a soldier who went out and fought for the same government that is protecting you. What protection did they have while they did what they did? That's why I'm saying that you have to be a little off of your rocker to do this, because you are literally doing it. This is not the same as starting a business. This is not the
But it's
same as you going to the military and your family is straight if you die or if you come back. It's not the same. What I am asking is, what protections did they have while they were fighting for the same rights that we have? You understand what I'm saying? No matter how you spin it, no matter how much you talk about it, Tuame, you went into the military. So the government is going to take care of you. You understand
but
what I'm saying? Who
but
is
the
taking care
military
of
didn't.
them?
But what
So
you're missing, I think you're missing where I'm going with it. I'm saying that level of insanity that you're explaining is a necessity. They didn't have a government protecting them,
I
but they
didn't
also
say it
didn't have a
wasn't.
way to eat.
I just acknowledged the fact that it is. You
yeah,
have
I,
to
I
be
think
crazy.
I think in this scenario, and I get it, but I think in this scenario, it's like you are a part of, you're experiencing the same discrimination that everybody in your neighborhood is experiencing. So it's like there's two options. You can just deal with it and deal with whatever they decide to throw at you, or you can be a part of the change. And sure, you may end up risking your life, but it may mean that my kids may have a better lifestyle moving forward if we can just get some semblance of change to happen. And I think that's the key when it comes down to this thing we call humanity. There has to be some people who are willing to sacrifice their life for the greater good. And if they are not willing to sacrifice their lives for the greater good, then they become the pacifists that Roland was talking about, right? They become those ones who just like, well, somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it. And every day they wake up, somebody's going to do it. And then you just don't know when the next day, you don't know what the next day is going to bring. When, them boys decide they're going to come knock on your door, then it's time for you to pay the price. So what do? Do you just wait on it to happen, or do you become part of the change? And I think right now, and I think that's the key here. I think when we look back and we see the people who made a decision to say, hey, I'm going to do something. I'm not just going to sit back and let it happen. And if, it doesn't work in my favor, at least I tried. But at the end of the day, I got kids that need better. They need me to do better. Like, what would my kids think when they see me and they realize that, oh, what are they going down the street doing what they're doing? Dad in the corner, curled up in the corner. Like, I can't hide behind my daddy because my daddy busy trying to beat me to the hiding spot. So I get it. I understand at some point, yeah, you gotta be, you gotta
have to be a
you
little
have
off.
to, I won't say off, but you have to
But
find
I'm
that personal courage, right? That's what I want to call it. I'm not gonna call it crazy.
Survival mode.
Right. I'm gonna call it courage.
I'm gonna call it going. I'm gonna call it being nuts. But it's not a. I'm not saying it like it's a bad thing.
Right.
Sometimes it takes some crazy people to rattle the hornet's nest. Sometimes it takes some nutcases to go stab the beehive. It's what it is. But I'm just saying, me speaking as I am right now, I'm just
Mhm.
angry. But back then, I don't know what I would be.
Super angry.
Because like I said, man, the cost of leadership is your life, and you have to be a little off your rocker to risk your life without any backing. But it's a
Chris,
good kind of crazy. You understand
Chris
what I'm
would
saying?
be
It's a
Chris would
necessary
be
kind of crazy.
Hey, Chris would be Super Saiyans. No, I'm joking. Listen, let's grab some of these points in the chat, man. They're lighting it up, and we're coming close to the hour mark. So Trey, good to see you, brother. Trey said, "Would you consider yourself as a pioneer within your own legacy?" I served so that my kids don't have to serve. So I think that's a great question, Trey. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
Yep. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, yeah.
My
Were you done? I'm sorry. Go
no.
ahead.
Oh, I would say yes, good, bad, or indifferent. I've said before that right now, in all three of 'em, I got one son in the reserves and two on active duty. So that's all three of my sons right now. So, like I said, good, bad, or indifferent. I created a blueprint for them to follow. They see how dad living right now, dad chilling. You know what I mean? They see some of the positive things that go on in my life, and you know, um, they see this as a way to get there. This is what they saw for the last, I did 20 years, so that's what they saw for a lot of their life. They saw the moving around and different things, and then they saw what it evolved into. So, um, yeah. And like I said, I put in the chat. So to that last part, I serve so my kids don't have to serve. What I did, I understand that. What I did was I believe in giving my sons the information and then allowing them to choose what they do with it. Whether or not I wanted them to serve or not, I didn't want to have an influence on their decision. That's not my job.
Yeah, and for me, I think it was more survival because and even I got interviewed when Desert Storm was kicking off. The news came and interviewed me because I was coming in. And they said, "Why would you join the military when war is about to go on and this, that, and the other?" And I was like, "Well, I got shot on the west side here in Detroit. If I'm gonna get shot at for getting the check and this, that, and the other, have a better chance, I'm striving for something better. Sometimes you got to fight through something to get to better. And that's what it was for me. So I can get my kids out of situations. And I always looked at it like I didn't serve so that they wouldn't join, but allowing them to have choices. And now, since I did serve, I can inform them of said choices. I can inform them the good, the bad, the ugly, and not just what the recruiter might tell them. And oh, you can get a Dodge Charger and all this other stuff. I actually could inform them and allow them. Now, did I want my kids? No, I was of the thought frame like my father. He said, if you join any, go into the Air Force and go into this because he's trying to minimize me being on the battlefield. That's what he was trying to do. And that's what I tried to do. But if they didn't have any direction and needed discipline and all this other stuff, go ahead, make it happen. Something, but I'm like, hey, inform them of the choices, make your own decision and push through it. Once you make that decision, you got to stick with it.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. I would have to say yes. And when I say that from the perspective of not necessarily for them to follow behind me, but to give them the options on what it is that they want to do. To where what I did is not necessarily the only option. Well, and I was like you. My daddy told me not to do it. Next thing you know, I'm like this right here. So I was just an knucklehead, bro. You know, if you tell me not to do something, I'm gonna do it anyway, just to see why. But also in that particular where I grew up at, it wasn't really a whole lot to be done. It's like either you go to school, you get an education, and probably work in the school system or whatever, or you go work in the factory. So I didn't want to do none of that. So that was like my escape route. So what I say, I view myself as a pioneer, sure, to a certain degree, but a pioneer that gave them options, not necessarily for them to follow in the same path. And I think that's kind of like exactly what we're saying here. The things that our forefathers and foremothers did, the things that they did is the reason why we have options now. So great question, Trey, and thank you for that. We got to press, man, because man, we're beyond the hour, and the time just seemed like it does not want to slow down for us. So we're going to kind of jump down to leadership styles, right? And so the question that I want to ask you guys, and again, this is the difficult part, right? If you can imagine, just for a minute, living in that era, okay, what would be an employed leadership style that you would harness to achieve your goals? I'll tell you what. I'll go first. I'll go
Uh,
first. Um,
okay.
so I'm I'm not going to go somebody who's mainstream. I'm going to go back to who I talked about last week, right? So Septima Poinsett Clark. Some of the things I talked about, like she was a real heavy hitter behind the scenes. And she supported the likes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and so forth and so on, doing a lot of work with the NAACP. And so for me, I would say that I would believe that she employed more like a covert leadership style, one to where she is doing the work, but she is behind the scenes, and you really don't know how much work she is doing until somebody else who is mainstream is telling you that I could not have done this if it had not been for her. So I think covert is one of the most under talked about leadership styles, and one that's not talked about a lot today. One of the most under talked about leadership styles that we see in that era, because there are a lot of people behind the scene that did a lot of great work.
For my fellow service members, this may sound a little cliche, but I would foster unity in the spirit decor, right? Because although we have a lot of pioneers in our history, but we always hear of individual achievements, right? Individuals who've done work for the community, individuals who have reached heights, but uh, it's not often spoken about of those who brought the people together, who kept the people firm. So I would in that time, and of course I'm thinking of a person that sees the residual outcome now. Um, Trying to go back then, I would definitely try to give give a story to the next generation that all of this is possible because there's a team behind us. And I know all these people we're talking about, of course my camera guard as I'm talking, right? uh I know all the people we talked about had people behind them, had family behind them. They were The houses weren't as divided yet at that time frame. But what I what I do know is that history don't tell that part of the story. The We don't always hear of the community that's standing behind someone as their champion through these experiences. And so for me, I would want to employ that type of leadership style, one that fosters unity in the spirit decor.
I, I like the example of Malcolm X. And people think about the by any means necessary and things like that. But I think that when you see his transition from how he moved earlier in his life to where he started to learn, started to grow, started to read, started to get around other people. And from there, he starts to speak on his convictions. He lives out his convictions and he stands there. I think leaders stand on their convictions. When you say, this is who I am and this is what I'm doing for my people, and you won't move, when they see it in your eyes that, hey, I'm willing to go to bat for whomever as long as you're standing righteously, I look at that as a leader, not just somebody that's loud. So it's a lot of loud people out there, but then once they receive some backlash, they bow down. But I think his situation where he say, "Hey, I come from here, so I don't want to go back there," and it ain't about the money; it's about my people moving forward. So if I got to take some bumps and bruises for that, so be it. Let me get in line.
I like what Gaddy talked about. So I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of that and go with the military too. I remember when I went to PODC back in 2001. You know, our motto was by example. You know what I mean? Everything was um, be an example. You know, when you make E5, that's your first step. You make sergeant, that's your first step into manhood, or to the brotherhood of the NCOs and different things like that. And one of the things that we were taught was, you don't always have to say stuff. Sometimes just being the example can be enough. Your uniform pressed, boots your boots shine. Yeah, I came in. We used to have to shine boots. So just and being back then, because I don't know how technology was, or how information traveled back in the 30s, but it wasn't at the speed of a button that we have right now. So I would think that during that time, he wasn't always able to talk or able to speak or be on podcasts or platforms and stuff like that. So I think that one of the best ways that he could be an example, I mean, the best way he could employ his leadership style was just being an example, being an example of dedication and hard work, and you know what I mean, with all of those different things, and you can achieve your goals. So that's what I'm gonna roll with, being an example.
Again, I'm going to say I don't know because I'm not back then. So I don't know what type of leadership style I would employ because I'm not in the situation. And it's difficult for me to envision myself in this situation. It just is. Knowing how life is right now and all of the stuff that they had to go through back then, and some of the stuff that isn't even documented that we still got to go find. Like, I don't know. I don't know what I would do back then. I would, like you said, man, I would probably be one of the guys in jail. I would probably still be the angry guy. So I don't know.
Got it. Angry guy
Angry
is
guys go to jail. They inspire from in jail sometimes.
there you go.
Just saying.
I think because one of the things I tend to look at is like you guys said, we was in the army for a prolonged period of time, and I think we talked about personal courage already. I think personal courage is one of the things that is just going to be a norm, just like resiliency, right? But I also would say that integrity has to be at the forefront of what you're doing. Like when you're trying to unify and get a movement together, a movement of people doing the same thing, everybody on the same accord, working for the same outcome, then you have to be integrous. You have to be integrous because the last thing you want to do is be an individual that has a lack of integrity within that group. If you're within that group and we're trying to move in unison for something that is for our people, for the greater good, it would just be astronomical if anybody would be deemed as the person who had no integrity. I'm going back to the whole Malcolm X scenario now. Remember in the movie when they shot him, and it was I think it was a brother that shot him, right? And how they just rushed him and attacked him. So it's like stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? You have to be a person of integrity, and that kind of goes hand in hand with leadership, without question, right? But just imagine anybody during that era when we're trying to galvanize a group of people together, all working together for the same good. There has to be integrity at the forefront of what you're doing. You can't just be a social loafer in that group thinking that, oh, I'm going to allow somebody else to do it, but I'm just going to go along with it so they can say, so that they can believe I'm a part of the movement. No, it has to be integrity at the forefront. So integrity, resiliency. I also believe in the concept of covert leadership. And then on the other side of it, you have those people who are out there in the front. Somebody has to be the face of a movement. Somebody has to be the spokesperson. Somebody has to stand on their morals and actually grab the microphone in spite of any fear, right? Overcoming any type of fear that they have, so that they can actually be out there and speak that be that voice for the people. So I think there is a number of different types of aspects of leadership that we can consider when it comes down to trying to be a part of a movement. So thank you guys for that, and I greatly appreciate your comments here. Let's see. Um, Let me see. Adrian has a comment there about her last comment. The leadership style of Andrew Bryan, the pastor of the First African Church, who was instrumental in hiding slaves in the church with the symbols of safety or caution while escaping to freedom. That's an example of covert leadership. Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for saying that. Who is this individual? Let's move on to the next one while I try to figure this out. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, brother Davis, man, good to see you, man. I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that, man. And oh man, and it's good to see that you're doing all the great and wonderful things that you're doing, man. I'm watching you low key behind the scenes, brother. You're doing awesome. Keep striving, keep striving. You're doing great. And again, thank you for that. I am extremely humbled by you saying that. Moving on to the next. I'm choked up. I'm in my feelings right now. How did leader how did the leadership styles of your selected pioneer challenge existing norms and inspire innovation? And what lessons can leaders draw from these pioneering approaches? Like what lessons can be pulled forward today?
Using John Henry Howell, the pioneer I chose today. I think the thing that stood out to me was his example back in his community, right? Um, I think today we're so comfortable, and this is why, with a conversation that we were having a little bit earlier, because of the comfort that we enjoy today. We don't have the necessity, or we don't feel as if we have the necessity to pioneer, to push for true change, or to come together like like our ancestors would have, uh but the one thing that we do have uh is the ability to be an example in our community, in spite of what we had to fight and go through. I'm still willing to go back and help those. I think one and this is just me, I think one of the largest crimes that we do in our community is we go out and we find out how to make it. We find out how to achieve. We find out how to be financially literate. And then we don't go and at least attempt to teach those who
We
we left
gatekeep it.
behind. Yeah, absolutely. We gatekeep it. We hold it for ourselves instead of creating these opportunities for those who come from where we come from, who has the same experiences that as us. So I do like when you read his story, you see where him and his wife goes right back out into the community, and I think in Memphis, Tennessee, and begin to feed people who were hungry like he was when he grew up, get giving stuff out. Those things to me stand out, uh, especially in a leader.
I'd say for my person, he when it comes to him, he received an honorary doctorate, and as he was working on the blue baby syndrome, he was the pioneer in it. He was the catalyst, but because of his skin complexion, they kind of wanted to deny him the just like patents. They wanted to deny him credit for everything, but he was the one doing everything. So he had a lot of adversity to go through, and he received an honorary doctorate later, and he actually taught surgery at Johns Hopkins University. But during that time frame in the 1940s, they're like, no, we can't give this person this credit for this. We can't allow him to be the catalyst for it because we deserve this credit. We need this credit. And if we say we don't want others to think that they're smart enough to become like us, smart enough to become doctors, smart enough to get out of the ghettos and such. So he had to go through a lot of adversity simply for people to call him doctorate. And then they didn't even give him a doctorate, a medical doctorate. They gave him a doctorate in business or something like that.
All right, here I go. Boy, I be trying to break this question down into a couple little pieces. So if I'm looking at my leadership style, I talked about resiliency, I talked about discipline. So I'm just going to use those two right there. I don't necessarily I say when it comes to selecting pioneer transitions, I don't really have anything for the first part of that. I'm still trying to go through all of that in my head. Um, and I don't have it all. So I will address the second half of this and what lessons can leaders draw from these pioneer approaches. And again, I'm using resiliency and discipline. So with resiliency and discipline, if we go back to Jesse Owens and stuff like that, that resiliency that he had, I mean, everybody can learn from that. Everybody can learn that, a lot of things in our life are temporary, and everything that we have ever been through, we have been through, good, bad, or ugly, or everything in between. And then when it comes to discipline, like it took discipline in order to get those 4 medals. Like there's a lot of training that goes into um running, 100 or 200 or a long jump or 4x1. There's a lot of different types of training and a lot of different types of exercises that go into becoming the best of the best. You know what I'm saying? So just having discipline in your life and um, having resilience in your life can create for a better leader in yourself. So that's what I'm gonna end with.
I didn't have a person,
Gotcha.
so I'm just listening right now. But like I said earlier, man, all of these characteristics that you all are saying are all a part of being a leader. But like I said, man, I just, based off of the little research that I've done, off of the people that I was taught to learn about, I really don't see them inspiring innovation like that anymore, because I think the message has gotten lost. I think we need, like I said, man, I think earlier I said we needed to dig deeper, and we do. I don't think the greats died for this. And that's me looking at it from an objective point of view as an overall. I don't think they did all the things that they did and accomplished all of the things that they accomplished for this. So I don't know. Maybe I have to dig a little deeper.
I got you. I got you. Rolling, you gave yours already, right? Okay. Um, so going back to Bayard Rustin, I think going back to his sexual orientation, I think that's one of the biggest concerns that we would have, or that he probably had to endure in trying to find a way to communicate with people so that they seen him as a person and not through the lens of his sexual orientation. So I believe that he had to come up with different ways of communicating, being more of an orator and a very good spokesperson, so that people can see beyond that. So he had to get to the point to where he became innovative in his speaking style. He was very intellectual, and it would and you can clearly hear that, especially if you go look at the movie. Right? They selected an individual that was very clear. He was very articulate in his speech. So that's one thing that I would see. I would say, and then I would also go back and I got to remember the second half of the question now. Uncle Junior, I'm getting like you, bro. What was so the lessons that we can draw? Well, I think first and foremost we got to eliminate the judgment that we have in our eyes when we see certain people. I think sometimes I believe a lot of times we're automatically conditioned that when we see a thing, we believe a thing. If I was to show up in an establishment looking just like I am right now, they will automatically default their mentality to a particular thing. But people like, and I'm gonna just use this one person, David Banner. David Banner will walk in just like this, but David Banner has a master's degree. So a lot of times what we do is we automatically see a person, then our mind default to that. So one of the biggest things that I can say is that the lesson that I will pull forward is that we have to remove all judgment out of our eyes and learn to see people for who they are and what they are bringing and presenting in the environment. If a person is presenting good in the environment, then accept the good that they're bringing and stop judging them for who they really are. I would say that's the biggest thing that I would bring forward. And that can go for either way, because when you go back in time, that's really what all of this was about. All of this was about judgment because of the color of a person's skin. So that would be my big one. One last question before we kind of jump into our final thoughts here. Um, Again, before we jump into the last question, again, shout out to everybody who's joined us. We greatly appreciate you for being here. Make sure that you hit the like button on whatever platform that you're on, because we appreciate that. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you for being here. Again, lessons for today's leaders, the last section. And on that question, with that being said, the question under that topic is, what can we learn from the experiences and accomplishments of Black pioneers that can provide valuable guidance for today's leaders? In other words, if you guys had to go and talk to some leader in some Fortune 500 company and they say, I want you to bring me something from Black history, pick one person, and I want you to bring that to the forefront and say, hey, what can I take from this person and incorporate in my leadership style? What would it be? It could be one word, it could be a sentence, it could be a paragraph, but whatever it is, go.
I would say be righteous. Be righteous. And what I mean by righteous is everyone that we talked about did something that was bigger than them. So it wasn't about them. It was about the whole. So just be righteous in your actions. You understand what I'm saying? Understand that you being a leader ain't about you. It's about who you're leading. And to keep it real, the best leaders learned how to follow first. So that's where I would start. Just be righteous.
Oh, man, I think I would start with, and it's gonna be kind of corny or whatever, but I would say Yeshua, or who people tend to call Jesus, and he said, "If the world hates you, know that it hated me first." Because I think we get in our feelings about, oh, he made me feel and all this other stuff. It ain't about you. If the end goal has everything to do with you, then the whole thing has to do with you. But while you're working a problem, while you're in the process of doing something, make sure that it's never about you being lifted up.
Roland kind of stole mine. Just got to start by saying that's why you go last, bro. Nah, but I was gonna say, make an impact without the need for recognition. I think the more we go back and we uncover the stories that are untold, to find out how many patents uh, that Thomas Jefferson got from his black slaves and those who worked for him who couldn't create patents because of their because they were black or whatever. Like, they still made impact in our history, though that they may never get the true recognition. You know, uh, so I would say, if your passion is to impact something, don't shut down. I hear too many people sometimes say, they didn't recognize me, they recognized so and so, but I'm the one that did all the work. But did the change that you wanted to happen? And I think if we can, and I understand with the era they came from, but if we can get our minds focused more on the goal than ourselves, we'll get a lot further.
What can we learn? So we, like I said, four of us was in the military, and there's a lot of great leaders and pioneers that have been in the military, and I'm speaking about, with this question, we're talking about pioneers. I know we've reached back into history and grabbed some people, and continue on with that. I'll continue to use Jesse Owens. However, also want to, since he's in the chat, is give him a shout out, and that's to Sergeant Major, well, retired Sergeant Major Al Lampkins. I worked for him years ago, and one of the things that I learned from him was just about, as I said earlier, being the example. Like, when you go out there and you get 4 gold medals, you are an example. You know what I mean? And people can always look to that. It's like, you know what, I want to be like that. He don't have to say anything. He don't have to do anything. He just have to be that. And then, when I work with Mr. Lampkins now, um I was E7, he was E8 at the time. He ended up making Sergeant Major, I don't know, probably about 15 or 16 years. It was pretty early on, might even been earlier than that. He might correct me in the chat, I don't know. But it's just like, when you have people, when you are that leader and you follow the rules and you do what you're supposed to do and you're excelling and you're very good at what your job is, just being that example, people will want to emulate and people will want to follow you. So it's like you said in the beginning, if you want to take anything and move it to today, and what I would give to leaders, I would tell them to be the example that you will want, your employees or the people up under you, to be what you want them to be, in a sense. And of course everybody's different. However, I think that if you look like excellence and you smell like excellence and you breathe excellence and discipline and all of these different things, and you become that example, it's a lot easier for your the people up under you to follow you.
I like it.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
Get over not being liked, because all of the leaders that came before us, everybody didn't like them, and they still were able to make a great impact. Get over not being liked, and get over the fact that you can't take everybody with you.
Facts.
That's one of the major things that I would take from the leaders of the past, to be real, because a lot of them had to shed some old people to get to the new person that they were. So yeah. Okay, I'm done.
It's called addition by subtraction. I think my comment would be quite simple. Um, a race is a competitive sport. There is only one race when it comes down to humanity, and that's the human race. So when I go back and look at Bayard Rustin, there were some things that he had to overcome. He had to overcome the mental stigma of assuming what somebody saw when they looked at him, being a gay man, things of that nature. So I think that's one of the biggest things I would say. Stop automatically making up in your mind what people see when they see you, right? And then just be the person that you are right now. in the understanding that you're going to learn, you're going to grow, and you're going to continue to develop. But don't automatically make up in your mind that they see something that's bad. Don't automatically make up in their mind that they're seeing you through the lens of judgment. That would be my lesson to that particular leader, if that was the question that was asked to me. So, appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome as always. Every week, I greatly appreciate you, and I want to make sure that I say it loud and proud out in the airways so that everybody know it. I appreciate all of you guys in the chats. You guys are amazing, and I appreciate the value that you've added to this conversation. I want to make sure that I leave the chats on so that when people go back and look at this video, they actually see all of the valuable information that you added in the chats. That said, it takes us to the bittersweet moment, our final thoughts. I'm going to change it up a little bit tonight. Change is good. All right. So, with that being said, I think we're going to start off. Let's have starting off with. We're going to start off with Chris. So, Chris, you got the floor first. Then after that, we're going to roll into, rolling. Then so it's going to go here, here, then here, here, and then I final off. I may not have nothing to say. So that being said, Chris, you got the floor, brother. Take it away.
I guess I'm gonna be repeating myself, man. We have a very, we have a rich history. We have a rich history of great people that have accomplished a lot of great things. We just got to go find them and we got to go learn about them. A lot of the lessons from the past can cause a lot of the situations, can fix a lot of the stuff that's going on right now if we actually take heed to it. Um, so yeah, that's my final thought. Learn your history, do the knowledge, and then take what you have learned and try to implement it to be a better person. That's my final thought.
Wow, good lesson. I think I just mine is gonna be short and sweet. It's an oxymoron to demand respect while disrespecting yourself. And then two, stop paying attention to a person's tone more than you pay attention to the substance of what they're saying. You got to pay attention to their message and not how they say it. Stop getting in your feelings about it. And that's why I can talk about any subject, and you should be able to dialogue with somebody about any subject and receive their passion without being in your feelings about how they're saying it to you. That's it.
Mine will be simple today. Chris said something that sparked something in me, made me change my final thought when he said that sometimes we got to shed old people to get to the new person. But I'm gonna say the first person that you have to shed is you, so that you have to die in the flesh so that you can live in the spirit. You have to be the first change, and I think sometimes what holds us back from being modern day pioneers or being modern day leaders in our community is our self, right? We think that I have the answer, I'm the way, I'm this. No, Christ said he's the way, he's the truth, he's the life. So die to yourself and live in the spirit, right? So that we could die with Christ so that we may be glorified with him. That's all I got.
The title of the show is called Leadership Lessons: Unearthing the Wisdom of Black Pioneers. Leadership comes in so many different forms, shapes, and sizes. And, as most of us up here has been in the military, I'm sure all of us have stories where we have had great leaders, and we can tell you some stories when we had not so great leaders. The good thing about that is that you can learn from everybody. All around us, there is leadership. There is good leadership, bad leadership, and everything in between. And, when it comes to unearthing the wisdom of the Black pioneers, I would challenge anybody, to include myself, to go back and look at some of those old movies or do some research on some of these people that were talked about today, and try to pull out some of those leadership lessons. What can we learn from Jesse Owens or Vivian or whoever else was talked about tonight on the show? What I mean? What leaderships can we use what leadership lessons that they have taught us can we use to be better in what we are today? So that's what I want to leave with. Just reaching back in time, like some other people said, figuring out what those lessons are, or trying to find some lessons, and then going forward and applying those lessons in our life to become a better version of ourselves in the future.
I think for the most part, as we listen to this conversation tonight and last week or so forth and so on, I think if you did not already know, I think you have come to the conclusion that we actually have a rich history that we need to get in touch with. We need to unpack. We need to figure out and then share the stories with our children and their children and so forth and so on. Have those campfire conversations, teaching them about some of those pioneers in our community that kind of help make things so much easier for us today. As you heard us unpack leadership lessons based upon some of our pioneers, you heard a number of different things. We talked about Jesse Owens, we talked about John Henry Hale, we talked about Vivian Theodore Thompson, we talked about Bayard Rustin, and we mentioned some other people as well. I think that's just a good start. That is a good start to get the ball rolling. No pun intended. But I think when we look at it from that perspective, I believe wholeheartedly that we, just based upon just some studies that we can do and even watching movies, I think we can see that our history is rich enough to where we can extract the important information. We may have to think a little bit, and that's okay. Thinking is not a bad thing. It doesn't hurt as much as you think it do. But we may have to think a little bit so that we can extract some of that information and figure out innovative ways to apply them today. You can't apply everything. We got it, right? But you can apply some of those things today so that what you'll find is that those inspirational messages, those spiritual terms, words, so forth and so on, can literally permeate and transcend time and actually work in this day and time, just like it worked back then. So again, I just want to thank each and every one of you who joined us this evening. Thank you on whatever platform you're on, whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on X, whether you're on Instagram. We greatly appreciate you. We value you. Again, go to www.totalmindsetshift.com if you haven't already and join the community because we are building our coalition, our own movement, right? We're building a coalition of like-minded individuals who just want to uplift each other. And what we want to do is celebrate you as you progress in life and actually achieve the accomplishments that you want to accomplish. Remember, next week, same time, same channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central Time. We'll be here again next week on The Hearts of Men, where we're going to talk about Black innovators, people who created things that we're still using today. So listen, enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a great weekend. And remember to allow the best version of yourself to be a blessing to somebody else.